The second part of the worksheet will use a diagram template like this one. The x-axis is time. The y-axis is the concentration of oxygen, that's shown by the solid red line, and the concentration of carbon dioxide, shown by the solid blue line, in the circulatory system. The first section of the graph is for a terrestrial mammal, maybe a person, before they're submerged in water. Oxygen levels are high and carbon dioxide levels are low because oxygen is constantly being brought into the body and carbon dioxide is constantly being exhaled. The second section of the graph shows what happens when the mammal dives underwater. They're no longer breathing oxygen, so oxygen levels gradually fall as the tissues use more and more oxygen out of the circulatory system. Carbon dioxide levels rise as the circulatory system absorbs the products of cellular metabolism, but has no way to dispose of it. The third section of the graph shows what happens when the mammal resurfaces and starts breathing air again. Oxygen goes back up to its previous level, and carbon dioxide goes back down. It's important to consider the dotted lines now. These are physiological boundaries. The red dotted line shows the minimum level of blood oxygen required to maintain consciousness. If blood oxygen falls below this line, the mammal loses consciousness. The blue dotted line shows the maximum level of carbon dioxide that the mammals can withstand before they experience an urgent need to breathe. If a mammal experiences this urgent need to breathe while it's conscious, it will immediately travel to the surface and take a fresh breath of air. If it experiences this urgent need to breathe after it has lost consciousness, it will drown. We're now going to jump to a YouTube video that shows what happens when humans try to push the boundaries of their physiological adaptations.
August remains a very busy month for competitive swimming, both here in Maryland and across the country.
And in that world, there's a desperate effort to warn the best swimmers and their families about something they didn't think they actually had to worry about. 11 News I-Team reporter Deborah Weiner explains.
It may at first make little sense how an expert swimmer, physically fit and water savvy, can drown. It nearly claimed the life of competitive swimmer Chris Pilot during practice with the Baltimore County swim team last year.
They realized that I was underwater and they pulled me out and they did CPR.
After swimming for 45 minutes, the team began vigorously practicing underwater breath control. It was on the second lap of a set that Chris went to the bottom of the pool for about 45 seconds.
Before this happened, had you ever heard about shallow water blackout?
No.
Neither had his parents.
But once I got to the hospital, they kept referring to it as in you're drowning, all the doctors. And then it began to dawn on me, like, this is really what happened.
And frightened many others in the swimming community only 6 months later. It's believed shallow water blackout was the cause of death for 14-year-old star swimmer Louis Lowenthal, a member of the prestigious North Baltimore Aquatic Club. His numerous records remain posted at his neighborhood pool in Stoneleigh. Family friend Brian Leffler is head coach for the swim team at Loyola College.
You never expect anything like that to happen, particularly to a gifted swimmer and somebody at such a young age, taken definitely too early.
For Lowenthal and Pilot, other medical conditions like heart problems were ruled out. Shallow water blackout, simply put, is a faint underwater, a loss of consciousness caused by oxygen starvation to the brain. It happens in water typically less than 15 feet from the surface. In most cases, a swimmer hyperventilates, swims underwater for a short distance, and without warning, blacks out. Low CO2 levels delay the brain's normal urgent need to breathe.
After they pass out or black out, they do in fact take a breath in that floods their lungs. And so when the coroner's examining them, they appear to be a standard drowning. And it's only if you're aware of the circumstances in which it happened that you're able to understand that this was the cause.
Pediatrician Dr. Alan Lake is on a mission to get the word out about this deadly phenomenon after 4 local deaths in just the last 2 years.
A competitive swimmer from my practice, a triathlete, a Navy SEAL, okay, and another situation of a swimming program where another individual passed away.
At the North Baltimore Aquatic Club, signs are now posted at each corner of the training pool, prohibiting long underwater breath holding, warning it can be deadly. The safety coordinator there says swimmers, parents, and trainers need to know that certain limits cannot be tested.
We just really don't want them taking themselves beyond. The coaches challenge them beyond their physical ability sometimes, but this is not an ability that you would have control over.
Experts say never swim or dive alone. Never take a dare to swim further underwater. And recognize, though it may seem counterintuitive, that the best swimmers are most at risk.
It's a preventable cause of drowning, okay? And it is totally unfair that it hits the most elite swimmers and the people you worry about normally the least.
The Pilot family is grateful that Chris is okay, and the high school sophomore has returned to the pool and competitive swimming, a sport that in Baltimore is forever changed by the loss of a gifted athlete and the new awareness that shallow water blackout is very real and deadly. For the 11 News I-Team, I'm Deborah Weiner.
You're now ready to start on the second part of the worksheet. You can assume that this is a human diver. Using the diagram template, draw in the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide during the pre-dive phase, when the person is hyperventilating, rather than taking normal breaths. Then draw in the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide for the dive phase. Remember that during the dive, oxygen can't be breathed in and carbon dioxide can't be breathed out. Does your oxygen curve fall within the blackout zone? If so, where does this happen relative to where the diver would feel an urgent need to breathe? We're now going to look at how diving to great depths, as opposed to staying submerged near the surface, may make this problem even worse. Some people take part in a competitive sport called competitive apnea, where they see how deep they can go on a single breath of air without scuba tanks. This is sometimes referred to as competitive free diving, although free diving encompasses a lot of other underwater activities. You can Google it if you're curious. Adding in this new element of depth means we have to consider how pressure changes with increasing depth. As you descend in the water column, pressure increases very rapidly. The amount of pressure on our bodies at sea level is 14.5 pounds per square inch. If you go down in the water to a depth of 10 meters, that pressure doubles. For every additional 10 meters you descend, the pressure goes up another 14.5 pounds per square inch. To think about what difference this makes to the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the various compartments of the body, you'll need to take into account Boyle's law. This states that pressure and volume are inversely related. So your spongy lungs would decrease in volume as you dive down, which causes the partial pressure of the gases in your lungs to increase. And that in turn will cause oxygen to diffuse into the circulatory system and later into the tissues. As you rise up again in the water column, the volume of your lungs will increase, causing the partial pressure of oxygen in your lungs to decrease rapidly. Considering that oxygen moves by diffusion in the direction of its pressure gradient, what does this do to the levels of oxygen in the blood? You can now complete the second part of the worksheet.